What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN GameScoop. I'm your host, Damon Hatfield. This is Greg Miller,
Hey.
Justin Davis, Brian Altano.
Rap.
Today we're talking about some comments made recently by Ben Cousins. Ben is founder of Ingimoko Sweden, former general manager at Electronic Arts.
Okay.
He has some ideas, some theories about where the console market is going, and he does not paint a rosy picture. He is afraid that the big three console makers, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, will suffer from something called innovator's dilemma, which is where even if the heads of these companies may realize what they have to do to compete with emerging markets like mobile, social, and free-to-play, even if they realize what they have to do to compete with them, those organizations will be physically unable to change course because they're built around totally different ideas. Basically, the opposite ideas of, if we define these emerging markets as games made by smaller teams with more modest budgets, smaller in scope, meant to be played in short bursts while you're waiting, while you're in transit somewhere. That is not the type of model that Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo have. So even if they realize that they need what they need to do, his theory is that they will physically be unable to change course, and one or more of them in the next few years, may be totally out of the game entirely.
So the console market's being disrupted.
Exactly.
This
is what
you got it.
disruption is the term, is the actual marketing term
Yeah.
that we're using here. I think the way that they describe it is where something comes into market which is worse, but it's cheaper and more convenient. So everyone sort of like drops down to that.
I don't know if I agree with anything
Now-
worse.
I know. Worse is in close.
Sure.
Now, let's, Ben here works for a mobile company, so we have to admit
Yeah, that's
that
true.
it's in his best interest for his theory to come true. But I think he poses, an interesting question, and I think you can see the effects of these market changes happening right now with THQ, right? Like they make good games that we would consider to be successful.
For a long time, for what, 20 plus
20
years?
years.
Saints Row the Third sold well. Darksiders 2 sold well right out the gate. It was the best-selling game of the month that was released.
It wasn't
in August
enough.
last year. That's not enough. It's not enough to sell millions of copies of your game.
We saw that time and time again with...
THQ shot themselves in the foot with the whole U-Draw, gamble and
Sure,
trying to
sure,
take
sure.
that.
Yeah, but it's
adding
also-
a bunch of dumb license games and thinking that was going to make money.
That's
The
true.
model is definitely changing. This is something we talk about at IGN all the
Yeah.
time. Specifically to the consoles, we always talk about the fact that right now it seems like there's either the independent game over here that gets released on the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, or the AAA Assassin's Creed blockbuster. And that middle ground, which is where THQ made its money, is falling out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's never going to be a console that looks like what the current generation of consoles look like. I mean, they're going to be very, very different. They're going to look a lot more like PCs. They're going to be a lot more wide open like PCs and like tablets and
we definitely talk
smartphones.
about it all the time that we are moving towards somewhere along. I mean, like what he's saying. I don't think it's like. I think that in place, I cover PlayStation, so that's what I know the most about. PlayStation has been building its brand for a while now in a way that they know they're not going to make hardware forever, and when that happens, there will just be PlayStation, and you will be playing PlayStation games on whatever device you have. That's the whole reason. That's the whole reason Sony continues to buy studios. They buy Naughty Dog. They buy all these guys to make exclusive games for them, so that when this finally happens, and Sony's like, we're done making PlayStations, but you can still find PlayStation games wherever they have all these studios that are making games. Sony Santa Monica is a great example of it. You're talking about he's talking about these more bite-sized games, these littler things. Sony Santa Monica is that incubator, right, where you're seeing the games like downloadable things like Datura coming out of them. They're the ones keeping their ear to the ground, trying to find people, giving the people who made Unfinished Swan, Giant Sparrow, space to work. Like, all right, come here and make your game here. They're totally incubating this livelihood that isn't the AAA blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so people get really upset, like when you say, there won't be PlayStation consoles forever, and people suggest that about Nintendo. Some people really kind of lose their minds and get really upset, and I don't really see that as such a bad thing
Oh, no,
at
not
all.
at all.
I mean, if the PlayStation 4 and the next Xbox are going to have, gigantic hard drives and going to be online services where you get updates to games. There's going to be games, that are low and medium and high priced. I mean, what you're describing is a PC.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're already describing. So what difference does it really make if you're playing it on a box that says PlayStation or a box that says Steam or a box that says Apple or whatever? I mean,
Because
the software...
fanboys have blind baby console allegiance. That's why.
Yeah.
They don't want to... You make a decision and you stick by it for 6 or 7 years, right? Like if I went out and I bought a PS4 this year and it cost $700 or whatever absurd amount of money they want to charge for it, I'm going to stick by that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a crazy person. I'll go out and buy every system. I own a Vita. not many people own one of those.
I like that that's the example.
PlayStation.
I even own a Vita.
One of those things. But I mean, I don't care where I'm playing my new Mario Brothers games, whether they be on a 3DS or they be on a Wii U, or if it's just sort of like this nebulous box that everyone comes together like, we're all making games for the game barn now.
The old game barn.
Well, yeah, so like, I mean, that's got to be what the future is, right?
Yeah.
You just have a box and you can play all your games on there. But even like get rid of the box. It can just be your TV, right? Like all you need is a screen and a controller to play these games.
It already is.
Like,
I get emails from, Chilingo publishes Cut the Rope and the original Angry Birds and a bunch of other really good games, and they have apps on Samsung televisions now, directly on the television.
I mean,
so.
Apple makes their Apple TV finally, and you can just stream everything to that TV, right?
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a standard. Like Blu-ray, everyone thinks about Blu-ray as a Sony thing, and it is a Sony thing, but it's also a standard that other companies, like I don't remember if Toshiba was Blu-ray or HD DVD, but like a handful of tech companies came together to form a consortium to say, look, this is going to be the standard. We all agree to adhere to it, and there's probably going to be a standard for video games where, you'll buy a box and it'll be able to play anything that comes out. It'll be a one console future, I think.
Who makes that box though?
I mean, anybody will be able to make one. Yeah, it'll be like a Blu-ray player or a DVD player.
That's the thing. Yeah, like I always kind of wish the game console or the game industry could be like that, where you just buy a player.
Yeah.
And then
See,
you
it
can
will
play
be like
any
that, but
DVD
then
on
one
there.
company will be like, well, we're going to have this 3D thing to differentiate our box, and someone else will do like a motion control thing, and then it ends up splintering back off again, right?
Yeah.
Right, but as much as that happened this generation, when you look at the PS3 and the 360, they were pretty much the exact same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like we got all the crap, like we moved controllers went in the garbage. The HD DVD add-on got moved in the garbage. Nobody cared about the connector really. If we shove all that shit out of the way, it's basically just two boxes that play the exact same games, the exception of a few exclusives like Uncharted and Halo.
And that's the whole thing, right? I would love a future where it's just one box and you can play. You don't even think of exclusives anymore. It's just there are developers making games.
Yes.
I really like what the PlayStation brand puts out, sure. But I can play that on the same machine as I play SimCity. I can play it on the same machine as I play Gears of War. It's one thing I just don't have to worry about, and I can click over to YouTube.
We would be down to only one fanboy argument, and it would be which game did you buy, not which console did you buy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we also, I mean, there are real problems. Even if we move to that model, those are closed boxes. And part of the reason that Apple's been so successful, I mean, I know the App Store is very closed off, but I mean, basically anybody can publish whatever they want on the App Store. You want to be an app developer, it costs you $100. You can make something and release it. They take, a standard cut from everybody, no matter who they are, big and small. That's kind of a problem for Xbox and PlayStation that don't have that model. Like, by controlling it so much more tightly, that every game that hits PSN or XBLA, I mean, sure, there's really, really bad games, but they're meeting.
They work.
They're not like scams or anything like that.
Yeah, they're not sketchy
right.
Mario clones.
But the flip side is, the App Store, you just, like, every single week, there's dozens and dozens of, like, really good and interesting games. And some are from Square Enix and cost $20. Some are from someone you never heard of and they're free or cost 99 cents. And that's a disruption that, I forget his name, the Njimoko executive was talking about.
Ben Cousins.
Yeah.
Cousins.
That's what Mr. Cousins is talking about. And I believe that the next consoles have to be wide open in that way. They need to have some wide open app store.
And again, this is one of the things I talked about coming out of E3, is that at E3, Sony made a big production about PlayStation Mobile during their press conference. And most of the people around me are like, I don't understand why we're talking about this. Show The Last of Us, show this, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like, this is them future-proofing. And that's why PlayStation Mobile's out now. And it does the exact same thing. For $99, you buy the license to make us games, and you send them in, and then we put it on our phones, on Vita, on all these different devices that are running PlayStation Mobile. And maybe it's the same thing. We're talking about, PlayStation Mobile's obviously on Sony devices.
Yeah.
When that wall falls, they'll have, hopefully, worked out the kinks on how this all works and have an idea of what to do.
And we do have Xbox Live indie games, but that launched fairly strong and then gets more and more and more hidden. It's actually very, very hard to find on the
That's actually the biggest issue now with all these things is the discovery of them. Is saying we have all these indie games, they go toe to toe with Uncharted in terms of like they're just sheer fun, and they're dirt cheap. But when you sign into these services, it's like Halo, Uncharted, blah, 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 all these big-ass games. And then that's why some people are actually kind of liking the Wii U's interface right now. And it's mostly because there's nothing to promote. They're not competing with anything. But when you turn on your Wii U, it's like, hey, here's these indie games, and they're cheap, and they're just as big, these big colorful squares, just like, Batman and Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. But once those become more populated, I think we're going to see the same thing. It just kind of gets shoved to the back. So.
Yeah. I mean, so right now, Apple lets anything on its App Store, and if it doesn't work or it's a scam or whatever, then they pull it down. They pull it afterwards instead of Sony and Microsoft, which are gatekeepers that let things onto their platforms. And I think that's one thing that the console makers have to do to to keep up with sort of these bite-sized gaming experiences. They have to have infrastructure for payments and free-to-play games. Some of that, like DC Universe does that on PlayStation.
Yeah.
But they need to be, they feel sort of hacky and they don't feel like baked into the experience like they do, on mobile devices right now. So I think that's something that needs to change. I mean, you got to be sure that, the next Xbox and PlayStation are going to have Farmville on them. I mean, they have to. They have to.
And but they'll still have Uncharted on them.
Right, that's the thing.
That's what people are totally terrified at this notion, this like nebulous beast in the night that's going to come and steal all the console games from us, and they did this back during Nintendogs and Brain Age, and before that, Dr. Mario and stuff like that. Oh man, these little indie games are...
Are people really complaining about Dr.
Well, I think
Mario?
people were like, I would rather have a regular Mario game. And it's like, I think there's room for all of this
Exactly.
stuff.
People think it's one or the other.
It's
and
never
not.
been that way.
It's the same way when recently Uncharted Fight for Fortune came out on Vita.
Sure.
And people are like, why hasn't Sony been working on Uncharted Vita too? Like, they probably are. This
They
is like
are.
a 2-second
just...
project that they helped with somebody else.
And I think the last piece of the puzzle is... Oh, now I lost my train of thought.
Pricing is a big problem, I think, that you talk about. You talk about like these little experiences and making people care. Discovery is something that's where IGN kind of filters in, right?
Yeah.
That we are here to say this game's really cool, you should try it. But still, like Unfinished Swan was $14 when it first started, and not a lot of people bought it.
Yeah.
And this past week, it was part of the 13 for 13 sale. Was PlayStation Plus? You got it for something like $250.
Yeah.
Which people were like, I bought it. It's awesome.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is digital. They need to be. Every single game needs to be available digital day one. So if you have a PlayStation platform, or you can get. Everyone hates on Angry Birds or whatever, but it's very, very popular. If you have a platform and you can get that for 99 cents and a platform where you can buy Uncharted 4, Uncharted 5 for $60, then you finally truly have a box that is good for everyone. It's useful for, your little cousin, your little brother. Maybe they have some ability to take those games on the go if you some sort of PlayStation mobile service. So, play it on your big TV, take it on your phone. You can also play Uncharted on it. It's all available streaming over the air. I mean, that's really, if they don't do all those things, they're going to be disrupted in a very, very major way, and they're going to get left behind, I think.
I'm actually worried that we will get to a point where people go, oh, well, I don't need a new PlayStation. I already bought a video game console this year, and they just pull their phone out of their pockets. And that was their one big purchase, and then that's it. And then, maybe the day of the set-top box will die. And, I honestly think that this would have happened a lot sooner had everyone said, sure, Sony, we'll pay $599 for a PlayStation 3. Had that become the norm, where all of a sudden $600 consoles were like, that's regular now, I think everyone would have gone. Everyone would have splintered off. And instead, now, I think if they announced the new next-gen consoles for anything more than like $400, we're going to look at that like it's the most absurd amount of money you would ever pay for something. Even if it is the best, highest, PC software, hardware on the market.
You figure for the new consoles coming out, what they have to push is that it does so much more.
Yes.
And I know it's been, PlayStation 3 launched with it, and then Xbox has definitely become the entertainment hub of your living room. That's what everybody talks about.
For me and for everybody else.
And that's a big problem.
But what are they going to say though? They're going to go, it streams movies.
We
like,
have
oh
that.
shit,
Yeah,
so
so
everything
I have all
does.
this. Yeah, that's a big problem. They have to come out and say it does something crazy.
I now own more devices that stream Netflix that I would never watch Netflix on. Than I do that I would. My Wii U. Like I'm not going to watch Netflix on there when I can watch it on my PS3, my 360, my laptop, my iPad, my iPhone, my original Wii. Like everything there has Netflix now, and without a format war like we had last time of HD DVD versus Blu-ray, which obviously Blu-ray won, but did they really? Because no one,
now nobody cares about Blu-ray.
Yeah, nobody cares about that.
People will sacrifice convenience for quality.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what we're seeing in the video game industry.
They will sacrifice convenience.
They'll sacrifice quality for convenience. Excuse me. So Blu-rays exist, and they're kind of selling, and there's kind of adoption. But streaming is even more popular, even though it's lower quality. And people will buy cheapy little 99-cent or free mobile games more than they'll buy $60 console games, despite sort of the gap in quality there because of the convenience factor.
Yeah, there's also the spontaneity of it, of sitting there and going, shit, yeah, I'll buy this for $1, or I'll buy this for $5. Even I'll download retail games now that I don't think I would walk into a store and get, or sit there and wait to get from Amazon. But I'm sitting there one day, I'm like, I really want to play this. I have $60 in credit on my console. Click.
Sure, convenience is a commodity that the console makers haven't quite figured out yet.
So I don't really know what these guys are going to do that's going to just be like, wow, it changes the game, it's not going to. It's you're going to stream movies now because we don't need physical, tangible media anymore.
Which brings us to the prediction, the doomsday prediction.
Yeah.
Part of the whole idea behind what's it called, the innovator's dilemma is that a successful business needs to know when to abandon traditional business practices.
Yeah.
Do you
think the PS4 will have a Blu-ray drive in it?
Yeah, it will, but it shouldn't.
Why?
Probably.
Well,
Because why would I pay for that?
Because no. I mean, then now we're starting to separate the thing. We always take this for granted. We get a lot of emails at GameScoop@IGN.com about how people in the middle of the country don't have the bandwidth, don't have the internet connection to download games.
Sure.
And that's the big thing we're at right now. Is this in between of
sound
What's
crazy?
going on over there?
Yeah.
That sound crazy.
I mean,
Yeah.
it does sound crazy, but look, like that's not a problem for Apple, right? Like the iPad's doing all right, and it's
Yeah,
you
but,
know
you
you
know-
can
Yeah.
only download apps.
but then
on
like
it.
an iPhone game is smaller than Uncharted 3.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they say.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
When Angry Birds Star Wars came out, I was running
Yeah.
late to work, but I got it on the Muni without a problem. I just downloaded it.
The
when I
biggest
came to
games
it.
are maybe 2 gigabytes on the iPad. It's
Yeah.
about as big as you'll ever see them get right
And
now.
that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're going to get bigger.
Yeah, they will. I mean, we were talking about how maybe you'll be able to download little little apps on your console and take them with you. But what's really going to happen is the reverse is going to happen. Is you'll have a tablet or phone that is also going to plug into your TV, and then that will be your console.
That's-
We're
that's
seeing
the
that
other option, right?
with stuff
I
like
mean,
Ouya and stuff like what
Apple
was the
could
game?
do that right now. Yeah, we talked about
the
something
USB
similar.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it. Yeah, I mean, Apple could do that.
Yep.
Right? They could do that with the iPad.
Yep. I mean, these games, the iPad runs at a higher than 1080p resolution. It's getting more and more and more powerful. And partially that comparison works because the consoles are 6 years old, right? So iPads now can replicate technology that consoles could do maybe 6 years ago. We're at about 360 launch. So when new consoles come out, yeah, you'll see that graphical disparity widen again. But these games are looking better and better and better.
They're ramping up so fast,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
The iPad's not that old.
No, they jump console generations. When I started writing about mobile games in 2006, we were at about Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Is how games look.
Tornado Mania.
That's the weird thing to me, though. Like we're like, oh, these old companies are all set in their ways. Meanwhile, Apple's allowed to put a new iPad out every 6 months that has, like, it's even a better hardware every single time. People are like, I gotta buy it, but we
Yeah.
can't. It's hard to get people to buy a console every 6 years.
I mean, the idea of a console, you touched on something like if those consoles are more than $400, they're in big, big trouble. And so you're stuck in this situation where for the technology they're going to pack into them, they almost have to be more money than that to be able to compete. But then it's like, man, is this really going to last for like 5 or 6 years? Like they're really stuck in this awkward position
Yeah.
right now with this hardware.
It's really tough. Like a phone, I think people justify it because a phone is something everybody has to have.
Right. Yeah.
Like a video game console is totally gravy and
So here's the
optional.
thing:
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
making the decision to buy that instead of buying an iPad, right? With that money, you have $500. What do you spend it on? Do you spend it on a PlayStation 4? Do you spend it on a new tablet
yeah.
or something else? Like that's what they're competing against now, or a new computer or whatever. It's tough. It's tough to
gonna
be a console
fascinating.
maker.
It's gonna be
I think
fascinating
this
year. I can't
is
wait.
the most interesting time in video games ever. I think we're
Yeah.
right on the edge of the biggest changes the industry has
I
ever
love
seen.
it. I'm so
I
glad
think so
we're
too.
here covering it because it's like this. It's such an exciting time for me to sit
This
there. and
has
go,
got to be the best E3 coming
yeah.
up in
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like there's gonna be amazing games and the consoles are gonna be awesome. Like I
Oh,
cannot
yeah.
wait to see what the consoles
know.
are.
What
are
is it
these
going
games?
to do
Yeah.
to make you want to buy it? It can't just be graphics. You can't
No.
just come out and be like, look at how good Watch Dogs looks. It's
If
like
they,
awesome, but I don't.
it's not graphics anymore.
Yeah.
It can't be. It never has been. Graphics have never been what sold a console. And if we're just like in Watch Dogs, you can see all the windows.
Yeah.
And we're like, who
Yeah.
gives a shit?
I can't give a shit.
It's true. It really is. I mean, I think about Steam as a platform where for me, Steam is very different than it is for most people. I use it to discover weird, strange indie
Yeah.
stuff. Like my Steam library is 150, really strange $5 and $10 indie games. Whereas other people, it's a console for them. They have Tomb Raider on it or, whatever. They, there's not very many big console games that don't hit Steam these days. And so if a console maker can really nail that experience, that shopping experience, yeah, maybe. But the question still remains, why wouldn't you just, they got Steam Big Picture
So
mode.
just
like-
let Steam do it, right?
Yeah.
You just need that
think,
box.
I think there's going to be a really big push or continued push on things like Xbox Live and PlayStation Network because I think that's the closest you get to that level of discovery. Like I have PlayStation Network and or PlayStation Plus. And I'll sign in and I'll be like, hey, these games are free this week. And I'll be like, I will try those out. Or these games are discounted. I'm like, I'll try these out. Normally, I would never have touched them. But I'm like, now they're here. They're part of this service that I pay for, blah, 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 blah.
They're getting pushed to you at either free or a price point
Exactly.
that's more like, oh, sure.
And
What do I care about $3?
It's the same thing I do that Justin does on Steam. I do the same thing where I'm like, oh, Terraria, I've heard good things about this. It's $1.25 today.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
grab
yeah.
it. Even if I never play it, I got it. And
Exactly.
it's,
That's
it's in front of me now.
I mean, this is a separate conversation, but it is a race to the bottom with pricing. I mean, we sort of touched on, I don't know if you intended this to be a prediction game, Scoop, but I'm like, here's the things consoles have to do. I mean, I think the video game industry is going to be free or freemium. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be.
It's gotta be. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that's what it has to be. Right?
I'm not saying it's a good thing either. Freemium has real problems and growing pains, and a lot of people taking advantage of, especially hardcore gamers, where it's like, look, if you want to play more, you have to pay more, and that's why hardcore gamers don't like it. Where you used to pay
yeah.
$60 and you could play 1,000 hours, but now if you want to play 1,000 hours, you're gonna have to keep paying up to play the game. But the flip side is you get to choose whether you like a game or not before it asks you for any money.
Yeah,
true.
Like everyone hates on Farmville and hates on Zynga, but you don't have to put a cent into Farmville until you know you like it, and then you can give it money. Whereas like Harvest Moon, for
like
example,
a long demo.
yeah, you have to make that decision in advance. And
Yeah.
so it's not a secret how those games sort of got 100 million, 200 million, 300 million players. And we see stuff like Path of Exile on PC is very, very fun. It's like Diablo, it's high quality, it's free. PlanetSide 2 is free. Like these are not little Zynga flash games anymore.
Yeah.
So the
Dust 514 for PlayStation
Exactly.
right
Yep.
now from CCP. Yeah.
That is probably all the time we have for these days, but this is really fascinating stuff. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll continue following the next generation of video games right here at IGN.